TCI is brought to you by Escandarea, the most dominant 3-year-old this decade. Seeing is believing at eskyonthego.com.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. I'm John Siegel alongside Joel Cunningham. Joel, a huge weekend for New Yorkers. The Giants win the Super Bowl, but they also end up with a really good 3-year-old on the Derby Trail in Alpha.
They really do, John. You know, the Giants, they were underdogs on Sunday, but on Saturday, Alpha was far from an underdog. He was a big-time favorite, and he didn't disappoint in the Withers. Now, we'll talk about a couple other races, obviously, at Tampa Bay Downs and at Santa Anita, where we had a little more chaos, but Alpha impressive in the Withers.
All right, well, let's see if he did enough to get on your top 5. I'm looking down the list. I see Union Rags, Creative Cause, Out of Bounds. They all hold their position. You do move El Petrino up to the 4th spot to fit in a son of Bernardini, but it's not the horse everybody would think it would be, the top 3-year-old in New York. You go with Algorithms instead, a horse that's not proven around 2 turns.
Well, John, I think what's important to note about this top 5 is we're trying to really identify 5 horses that we feel, not only from an ability standpoint, but from a pedigree standpoint, they're going to handle the Triple Crown races and project to have the most success in them. So when I look at a horse like Algorithms, I'm a little more concerned about his distance ability in terms of being a son of Bernardini than I am Alpha, but I think he's just a better horse. And if you look at that pedigree, he's a half to a couple really nice one-turn horses, Algorithms is, but he's also a half to a horse in like Successful Mission, who is bred to be more of a one-turn horse that handles 2 turns. So it's to be seen yet with Algorithms. The connections really feel like he'll stretch out, and it's to be seen, but he's been too good to this point to keep out of the top 5. We obviously had one disappointment in the top 5, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the Santa Anita race. But in terms of Alpha, John, when I look at that Withers, you know, he showed better ability out of the gate this time. Was hung a little wide, so I thought he lost a little ground, but as easily as he assumed the lead, you know, in the stretch, I really expected him to spurt away from that competition. Quite honestly, that group in New York isn't that good, with Swag Daddy scratching especially. I didn't think it was a very good group, so when he didn't kick away in the stretch, now he won by open lengths, he didn't really show, he showed more of a grinding style and didn't really show the spurt I wanted to see, so he took that forward step. I just want to see more from Alpha going forward, and it'd be interesting to see what they do. They're either going to point him for the Gotham, or they may just run him one more time in the Wood before they run him in the Kentucky Derby.
All right, let's talk about the horse that came off of the top 5. As you mentioned, it was one of Bob Baffert's. It was Sky Kingdom, Joel, and it was the Robert Lewis, where we saw all kinds of drama coming down the stretch. Obviously, Liaison clips heels, almost goes down, dumps the rider. That was a disappointing performance. But what I want to talk about is I'll Have Another, the horse that wins. You said this weekend horses had to step up. This horse stepped up huge.
You know, he really did. Another thing we talked about when we started, when we were trying to break down the Bob Lewis last week, is the fact that there was a lot of talent and a lot of big-time connections in this race. Just some of the talent may have been undeveloped at this point. Well, here's a colt that won first time out last year, too, ran second to Creative Cause, you know, on the poly track at Del Mar in a grade stake, and they thought enough of him to ship him all the way to Saratoga for a grade 1. Now, it was a sloppy track that day. He had a tough trip, and he did not run well. But here's a horse that's bred to go long. He's out of an arch mare, obviously a son of Distorted Humor on top. And he gets on that lead, John, and that track, the way it was playing over the weekend, you wanted to be very forwardly placed. You wanted to be close to the rail. He took advantage of it, and boom, he lit up the tote board.
All right, let's talk about a few other horses in here just because there was so much talent in this race. Joel, we see Rousing Sermon did not fire. Liaison really didn't fire. At the top of the stretch, he looked done to me. Bob Baffert did say he thought he was going to get up for second, but I don't know if that's just Bob saying that. Yeah. And Groove and Solo, unfortunately, was DQ'd. Tell me about those horses.
Well, I thought Liaison was done at the top of the stretch. Regardless of him in the unfortunate situation where he dropped his rider in the stretch, I thought he was completely done in the stretch, and it really makes you wonder about the quality of the Cash Call Futurity and about the quality of the Real Quiet Stakes. You know, we talked about Rousing Sermon and Liaison, both running 1-2 in those races. You know, that was on the cushion track, now translating that form to the dirt. But you know, another thing, John, is, again, that track was just playing so quirky. You know, if you just looked at the Strube Stakes as well, and the fact that, you know, Ultimate Eagle got out on a lead and just blew the doors off a pretty decent field of 4-year-olds by 7 lengths or so. The only horse that really made an impact was Jaycedo rallying up the inside. Well, looking at the Bob Lewis is the same way. The only horse that really made an impact was Empire Way rallying up the inside. Any horse that tried to rally wide off the pace just had no impact. And when you look at Sky Kingdom, he tried to do that. When you look at Rousing Sermon, he tried to do that as well, to no success. So I almost wonder if the track may have had a big-time effect on both races.
All right, Grooving Solo obviously doesn't have any graded earnings now.
Right.
Does that really hurt his chances moving forward into the Classic?
You know, it could, but I don't think so. The bottom line is this horse, just coming out of the maiden ranks, he has to step up anyway. I suspect they're going to bring him back in the San Felipe and then the Santa Anita Derby, so he's going to have plenty of time if he's good enough to get those graded earnings. I was actually impressed with his race, John. They put the blinkers on for the first time, and you saw a couple of sharp works coming in. He was too keen early.
Right.
Now, you wanted to be forwardly placed, and you want to be on the inside where he was, but the jockey was basically skiing on him, I thought, and could not really push him through from your pace setter and your winner for about half a mile there, and I think it probably took some fight out of that colt. Now, he got disqualified. Again, he showed enough for me that I'm interested in Grooving Solo when he comes back in his next start.
All right, let's talk about another horse that stepped up. Since the theme was who will step up this weekend, let's go down to Tampa and talk about the Sam F. Davis, where we see a horse step up huge from maiden winner to a leading three-year-old now on the Derby Trail, Battle Hardened.
Battle Hardened, I thought was pretty impressive, John. Now, when you look at the field, I'm not sure how quality of a field it is. You know, Perspective rallied wide in here. He certainly caught the eye. He came in as one of the favorites because he handled the track, but Perspective breaking from the far outside and having a wide trip, you have to give him some credit for the way he rallied. I thought Reveron was game. You know, certainly he got past in the stretch, but re-engaged, and we've seen that from Reveron. We've seen how game he can be, you know, from his Gulfstream Park Derby. But when you talk about the winner, Battle Hardened, to be a maiden, Eddie Keneally showed the confidence to ship him up to Tampa Bay for the Coolmore connection. So he had to talk Coolmore into shipping this maiden up for the Sam F. Davis Stakes to face good quality winners. Julian Leparoux was confident to ride. I think that says a lot right there. I think that says they really are very confident in this colt and the way he's been training, and he rewarded their confidence. You know, one thing I liked about this horse was the rhythm he showed. I mean, he's such an efficient mover, and he's got that rhythmic stride, and he looks like he does things very easily, John. So while the speed figures didn't come back well in this race, he's a colt that I can see taking those steps forward and progressing into a Derby colt. He's a half to Grade 1 winner, Colonial Colony, who wanted to run all day. So the pedigree's there.
All right, well, thank you, Joel. One thing for sure, this weekend confirms the fact that this Derby Trail is still wide open.
Wide open.
None of the winners make it into the top 5. Instead, you put on a horse that's not proven yet around 2 turns.
Right.
Very interesting. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back on Thursday. We're going to do a preview of the Hutchinson. We'll do something a little special for you as well.